Hey everybody, Mark with ExoticCarplayplace. Today I'm sitting in a normally aspirated Porsche 996 and I'm sitting actually in Ed's shop. He's got this car here that was dropped off with some concerns, and Ed, of course, I want to mention, is my favorite mechanic. He does a lot of the work on my Lamborghini and some of my other cars that I've had in the past. But let's take a look and see how this thing goes. Wait a minute. That's not working. Let's take a look. Take a look in the back here. Whoa, there's no engine. Go figure. See in the back of this car, the engine is gone. Why is that? Well, because it's another 996 that was afflicted with engine failure. Now, what is the norm? A lot of you guys have probably heard the IMS bearing is a commonly known problem with these 911s. These first generation water-cooled 911s, particularly with the integrated dry sump system. These cars, just the way they were designed, had kind of a weak point. And that weak point again was the IMS. There coincidentally are other problems with these engines, and that brings me to the discussion about this particular car. This car actually did not fail under an IMS failure situation. This one failed because it had a severe engine knock when it was cold. And after running a bore scope, it was pretty obvious that there was some pretty good substantial wear on some of the pistons. And that is actually what led Ed to do more investigation and found out that there's a problem that needed to be sorted. Fortunately, it wasn't the IMS, but it was a piston cylinder issue. So, getting to the IMS, I just want to touch on that briefly. Now, this car was disassembled. It was sent to L&N to basically bore out and re-sleeve. As they more or less have the patent for that type of activity, they have to do that part of the work. Now, Ed was able to, the car was, or the engine was then, or will be returned for reassembly. And Ed will reassemble the engine, put it back into the car, complete with, gearbox and everything back together. So that's something Ed normally finishes up. But because the patent for that boring is held at L&N, that's something that had to be subbed out. So that takes us to that part of the repair. The piston cylinders are all upgraded as well. This is an early car with a 3.4 liter flat six is normally the way this one was come with. It actually was upgraded to a 3.8 liter, something closer to Carrera S standards of a 997. So a much, much more potent engine. Now with that, of course, the ECU had to be reflashed. That was sent out to Protomotive in the States. That was taken care of as well to accommodate the larger fuel flow and everything else, the engine characteristics that you'd find in the 3.8. But back to the IMS. I have a set of bearings here. As an example, these are not IMS bearings. And in my opinion, this is my theory. But my opinion only, so take that for what it is. These are wheel bearings, but I'll give you an example of what we're looking at here. And an IMS is similar to this in a sense. It's a bearing, but it has seals around it, both front and back. And that bearing sits in the engine, and it's preloaded with grease. Now over a bunch of years, what happens, that turn, that grease eventually dries out. It gets pushed out. It gets offset, it works its way out of the seals sometimes, or it just, like I said, it just dries out and becomes less effective, thus leading to bearing failure and the dreaded IMS bearing issue that you hear about all the time. So that's a problem. That's kind of what you have. My theory is, if Porsche did something a little different and removed the seals from around the bearing. Now you got to remember, the IMS bearing itself resides primarily in oil, virtually all the time. And so if you remove those seals, these bearings are always submerged in oil. Now if that was just a simple design change, that could have possibly, and again in my theory on this, as well as Ed's theory on this, nobody's else, nothing's been proven. However, the theory is you remove the seals, it now allows that oil bath from the engine to constantly envelop these bearings. and it should basically allow this bearing to last almost the life of the engine. So that's our theory on the IMS. Now I know the IMS bearing in itself is a real heartbreaker for some people. What that really results in, this engine, and realistically, if you're sustaining an IMS bearing failure, it's going to be similar as what was done here with the piston cylinder set. Basically, most of the engine was rebuilt from top to bottom. This rebuild, including a revised IMS that was going into this engine, once it's all said and done, rebuilt engine, overbore, and basically installation costs, engine, everything in the whole nine, it's going to end up costing this gentleman anywhere from probably $20,000 to $30,000 US. Consider that cost. Now we know these 911s, these 996s are great value to buy on the used market, but also consider the fact how that can quickly be offset by an engine with high mileage or a potential IMS bearing problem. Now I'm not saying don't buy these cars. What I am saying is that is something that you've got to have good history on the car. If you're buying a used 996, make sure you've got all the right information, you know the previous owner, and there's a good track record or history and maintenance records, hopefully that indicates some kind of an IMS repair. So anyway, everybody, I hope you got something from the video. I wanted to give you a little bit of feedback on kind of my theory on the IMS on these early 996s, as well as what this car went through. It needed a rebuild. Why? Well, it looked like there were some cylinder washing issues, possibly overfueling, or maybe washing the cylinders created a wearing pattern on the piston, and thus ultimately resulted in a requirement for a rebuild. So again, everyone, that's all I have for today. I hope you liked it. Everybody, it's Mark signing out with ExoticCar Play Place, and I hope you come around the next one. If you haven't already subscribed, you make sure you do below, and we'll talk to you soon. Right? Bye-bye.